The day of Sarah's high school graduation was supposed to be perfect. Sunny, a little breezy, the kind of day you dream about for your kid's big moment. I'd ironed my best shirt, practiced my proud dad smile in the mirror, even managed to get a decent parking spot. Sarah, my Sarah, was graduating. And not just graduating, she was valedictorian. My chest swelled with a mix of pride and something else, something I couldn't quite name, a knot of anxiety that had been tightening in my stomach for weeks. See, Sarah and we've always had a complicated relationship. She's my daughter, no doubt about it, but not in the way most people think. I adopted her when she was 5. Her biological father, well, he was never in the picture. Her mother, my ex-wife, she passed away when Sarah was just a toddler. So it was just me and Sarah. From day one, I swore I'd be everything she needed. A dad, a protector, a provider. And I tried. God, I tried. But there was always this distance, this invisible wall, especially as she got older. The teenage years hit us hard. Arguments about everything. Curfew, homework, friends. Normal stuff, I guess. But underneath it all, there was this simmering resentment from her. This feeling that I wasn't enough. Or maybe that I wasn't him, the ghost of a man she never knew, but whose absence loomed large in her life. I tried to talk about it, to tell her how much I loved her, how proud I was. But it was like talking to a brick wall. Or worse, a mirror reflecting my own insecurities back at me. Then came the big one. About 6 months ago, a fight about college applications. She wanted to go to art school, something I wasn't entirely on board with. I pushed for something more practical. We yelled. Things were said. And then, in a moment of pure, unadulterated rage, she screamed it. "You're not my real dad." The words hit me like a physical blow. They echoed in the silence of the house, long after she'd slammed her bedroom door. I stood there, stunned, feeling every single one of those years of trying, of loving, of sacrificing, crumble around me. It was true, of course. Biologically, I wasn't. But I was her dad. I was the one who taught her to ride a bike, who stayed up all night when she had the flu, who cheered the loudest at her soccer games. I was her dad. Or so I thought. After that, things were tense. We coexisted, polite, but distant. The graduation felt like a finish line, not just for her high school career, but for our relationship. I braced myself for the inevitable. For her to walk across that stage, accept her diploma, and then disappear into her new life, leaving me behind. We got to the auditorium, found our seats, the usual pomp and circumstance. Speeches from the principal, the superintendent. Then, it was time for the valedictorian. Sarah walked up to the podium, looking stunning in her cap and gown. My heart was pounding. This was it, the moment she'd probably use to thank everyone but me. Or worse, to subtly acknowledge the biological father she'd never met. She adjusted the microphone, took a deep breath. The crowd hushed. I held my breath, and then she started. Her voice, clear and strong, filled the auditorium. "Good morning, faculty, parents, friends, and fellow graduates." She paused, her eyes scanning the crowd, and then her gaze landed on me. Just for a second, a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher. My breath hitched. "My name is Sarah Miller," she began, her voice steady. "And today, I want to talk about family. Not just the family you're born into, but the family you choose. The family that chooses you." I felt a strange warmth spread through my chest. What was she doing? She continued, talking about challenges, about growth, about finding your path. Standard valedictorian stuff. But then, she shifted. I wouldn't be standing here today without the unwavering support of the people who believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. The people who pushed me, who challenged me, who loved me unconditionally. She paused again, and this time, her eyes locked onto mine. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. And then she said it. The words I never thought I'd hear. Not like this. Not in front of everyone. And most importantly, I want to thank my dad, John. The knot in my stomach unraveled. My eyes welled up. I could feel the tears streaming down my face, but I didn't care. She said my name, not just my father or my parent, but my dad, John. It was a public declaration, a choice, a recognition. All those years of trying, of loving, of sacrificing, they hadn't been in vain. The wall, it wasn't there anymore. It had crumbled, not with a scream, but with a whisper of my name, spoken by my daughter, who, in that moment, chose me as her real dad. Let me take you back a bit, to before Sarah, before the chaos, before the quiet pride, before the constant ache of trying to be enough. My life before Sarah was ordinary. I was a software engineer, good at my job, but not passionate. I had a small apartment, a few close friends, and a routine that was comfortable, if a little predictable. Then I met Emily. She was a whirlwind, a force of nature, bright, artistic, with a laugh that could fill a room and a spirit that refused to be contained. She was everything I wasn't, and everything I secretly longed to be. We fell in love fast, the kind of love that feels like a tidal wave, sweeping you off your feet and leaving you breathless. We got married within a year, a small ceremony with just our closest friends and family. It was perfect. Emily was already a mother when I met her. Sarah was just a tiny thing, barely 2 years old, with wide, curious eyes and a shy smile. Her biological father had left before she was born, a fleeting presence that vanished as quickly as he appeared. Emily never spoke much about him, and I never pushed. It wasn't my place. My place was with Emily and with Sarah. I loved them both, fiercely. Sarah was a quiet child, observant, and incredibly sensitive. She clung to Emily, naturally, but she slowly, tentatively, started to let me in. I remember the first time she called me Daddy. It wasn't planned. It just slipped out when she was pointing at a duck in the park. My heart swelled so much, I thought it might burst. That was the moment I truly felt like a father. Not a stepfather, not a placeholder, but her dad. Our life together was a beautiful, messy tapestry. Emily's artistic chaos blended with my organized calm. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our quiet evenings on the couch. Sarah thrived. She was a bright, imaginative child, always drawing, always singing. Emily encouraged her creativity, filling our home with art supplies and music. I, in my own way, tried to provide stability, a safe harbor for their vibrant spirits. I worked hard, made sure we had everything we needed. I thought we had it all. I thought we had forever. Then, the unthinkable happened. Emily got sick. It was sudden, aggressive, a blur of doctor's appointments, hushed conversations, and the slow, agonizing realization that our forever was going to be cut tragically short. I remember sitting by her bedside, holding her hand, trying to be strong for her, for Sarah, but inside, I was crumbling. How could I do this without her? How could I be enough for Sarah when I felt so utterly broken myself? Emily's last words, to me, were about Sarah. "Promise me," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "Promise me you'll always be there for her, that you'll love her no matter what." I promised. I swore it, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. But the weight of that promise, combined with the crushing grief, felt almost unbearable. Sarah was 5 when Emily died, 5 years old, and she had lost both her parents. In a way, her biological father was a phantom, and now her mother, her anchor, was gone. It was just me, and a little girl who suddenly seemed so small, so fragile, so utterly dependent on me to navigate a world that had just shattered around her. The first few years after Emily's death were a blur of grief and adjustment. Sarah retreated into herself. The bright, imaginative child became quiet, withdrawn. She stopped drawing, stopped singing. Our home, once filled with Emily's vibrant energy, felt empty, silent. I tried everything. Therapy, playdates, new hobbies. Nothing seemed to reach her. I felt like I was failing, constantly. Every tear she shed, every quiet moment she spent staring out the window, felt like a testament to my inadequacy. I was a software engineer, used to solving problems with logic and code. But this was different. This was a human heart, broken and grieving. And I had no algorithm for that. It was during this time that I decided to formally adopt Sarah. It felt like a necessary step, a way to solidify our bond, to tell the world, and more importantly, to tell her that she was mine, that I was her father, legally and emotionally. The process was long, filled with paperwork and interviews, but I pushed through it. I wanted her to have my name, to be truly a part of my family. I wanted her to feel secure, to know that she belonged. I thought it would help. I hoped it would help, and in some ways, it did. Slowly, painstakingly, Sarah started to emerge from her shell. She started drawing again, tentative at first, then with more confidence. She found a love for reading, devouring books at an astonishing rate. We developed our own routines, our own traditions, Friday night pizza and movie night, Saturday morning pancake breakfasts. We learned to navigate life as a duo, a team. I learned to braid her hair, too, listen to her endless stories about imaginary worlds, to comfort her after nightmares. She learned to trust me, to lean on me, to see me as her constant, or so I believed. But even as she grew, as she blossomed into a bright, intelligent, and fiercely independent young woman, there was always this undercurrent, this unspoken understanding that I wasn't her real dad. It wasn't something she said often, not directly, but it was there, in the way she sometimes looked at me, in the way she'd pull away when I tried to be too affectionate, in the way she'd sometimes mention Emily, almost reverently, as if Emily held a secret key to a part of Sarah's identity that I could never access. I tried not to let it bother me. I told myself it was natural. She missed her mother. She was curious about her origins. But a part of me, a small, insecure part, always wondered if I was truly enough, if I could ever fill the void left by her biological parents, if I could ever truly be her real dad. And that insecurity, that quiet doubt, festered, growing stronger with each passing year, until it became the knot in my stomach that tightened with every milestone, every argument, every moment of perceived distance between us. Raising Sarah alone was a crash course in humility and resilience. I was used to solving problems with logic, with clear-cut solutions. Parenthood, especially single parenthood, was anything but. There were no manuals, no algorithms for the endless questions, the emotional roller coasters, the sheer exhaustion. I learned to juggle work, school events, doctor's appointments, and the constant need to be present, to listen, to understand. I cooked, I cleaned, I helped with homework. I played the role of both mother and father, often feeling inadequate in both. There were days I felt like I was drowning, overwhelmed by the sheer weight of responsibility. But then I'd look at Sarah, at her bright eyes and her innocent smile, and I'd find a renewed sense of purpose. She was my reason, my anchor in a world that sometimes felt too big, too chaotic. As Sarah grew, our relationship evolved, often in unpredictable ways. The quiet, withdrawn child slowly transformed into a vibrant, opinionated teenager. And with that transformation came new challenges. The innocent questions about her mother turned into more pointed inquiries about her biological father. Why did he leave? Did he ever care about me? I tried to answer honestly, gently, explaining that some people aren't ready for parenthood, that it had nothing to do with her worth. But I could see the hurt in her eyes, the lingering questions that I couldn't fully answer. It was a wound that I, as her adoptive father, could never truly heal, only try to soothe. The teenage years were a minefield. The sweet, compliant child was replaced by a fiercely independent young woman who questioned everything. My rules, my opinions, my very existence as her father. We clashed constantly. Curfew became a battleground. Grades, a source of endless arguments. Her friends, a mystery I couldn't quite penetrate. I tried to be understanding, to give her space, to respect her growing autonomy. But it was hard. I wanted to protect her, to shield her from the mistakes I'd made, from the hurts I knew the world could inflict. But she saw my protection as control. My concern as a lack of trust. "You don't understand me," became her mantra, a refrain that pierced my heart every time she uttered it. One of the biggest points of contention was her passion for art. From a young age, Sarah had a natural talent for drawing, for painting, for expressing herself through color and form. Emily would have nurtured it, celebrated it. I, on the other hand, saw it as a hobby, a distraction from the more practical pursuits. I wanted her to have a stable future, a secure career. I pushed her towards STEM subjects, towards finance, towards anything that promised a clear path to success. I saw myself in her, a reflection of my own pragmatic nature, and I wanted her to avoid the pitfalls of an uncertain artistic life. I thought I was doing what was best for her, guiding her towards a safe harbor. But she saw it as a dismissal of her dreams, a rejection of her true self. Our arguments grew more frequent, more intense. The quiet resentment that had always simmered beneath the surface began to boil over. She accused me of not understanding her, of trying to mold her into someone she wasn't. I accused her of being naive, of not seeing the realities of the world. The house, once a sanctuary, became a battleground of wills. The silence between us grew heavier, filled with unspoken accusations and simmering anger. I missed the little girl who used to call me daddy without hesitation, the one who would snuggle into my side during movie night. Now, she was a stranger, a whirlwind of teenage angst and defiance, and I felt utterly lost, unsure how to bridge the growing chasm between us. The incident with the college applications was the culmination of years of unspoken tension. She had been secretly applying to art schools, pouring her heart and soul into her portfolio, while I had been pushing her towards business programs, towards the Ivy League schools that I believed would guarantee her success. When I found out, it felt like a betrayal, not just of my trust, but of my vision for her future. I saw it as a reckless gamble, a rejection of everything I had worked so hard to provide, and in my anger, I reacted poorly. I yelled. I said things I regretted the moment they left my lips. And she, in turn, unleashed the words that had been festering inside her for years. "You're not my real dad." The silence that followed was deafening. It wasn't just the sound of her words hanging in the air. It was the sound of something breaking between us. A fragile thread that had held us together, despite everything, snapped. I saw the hurt in her eyes, the raw pain that mirrored my own. But beneath the pain, there was also a flicker of defiance, a hardening of her gaze that told me she meant every word. In that moment, I realized the depth of the chasm I had inadvertently created. I had pushed her away, not just with my words, but with my actions, with my inability to truly see her, to truly accept her for who she was. The biological truth, the one I had tried so hard to overcome, had finally become a weapon, wielded by the very person I had sworn to protect, and I had no idea how to disarm it. The 6 months leading up to Sarah's graduation were a living hell. The air in our house was thick with unspoken words, a suffocating silence that was far worse than any argument. We moved around each other like strangers, polite but distant. Our conversations were clipped, transactional. "Dinner's ready. Did you finish your homework? Good night." The warmth, the laughter, the easy camaraderie we once shared had evaporated, leaving behind a cold, empty space. I tried to bridge the gap, to apologize for my words, to explain my fears, but every attempt felt futile. She'd just nod, her eyes blank, and retreat further into herself. It was like trying to catch smoke with my bare hands. I saw her pulling away, not just from me, but from everything. Her grades, usually impeccable, started to slip. She spent more time in her room, the door closed, music blasting. Her friends, who used to be a constant presence, seemed to visit less and less. I worried, constantly. Was she okay? Was she depressed? Was she just acting out? I wanted to ask, to reach out, but the words seemed to catch in my throat. The memory of her scream, "You're not my real dad," was a constant barrier, a reminder of the chasm that had opened between us. I tried to distract myself with work, burying myself in code, in projects that demanded my full attention. But even there, her absence, her silence, gnawed at me. I find myself staring at my computer screen, seeing not lines of code, but her face, her hurt eyes, her defiant chin. I'd replay our arguments in my head, dissecting every word, every tone, searching for the moment where I went wrong, where I pushed her too far. The guilt was a heavy cloak, suffocating me. Graduation day loomed like a dark cloud on the horizon. It was supposed to be a celebration, a culmination of years of hard work, but for me, it felt like an ending. The end of her childhood, yes, but also potentially the end of any hope for reconciliation between us. I imagined the ceremony, the forced smiles, the awkward small talk. I dreaded it. More than anything, I dreaded her valedictorian speech. I knew she was brilliant, articulate, capable of moving an audience. But what would she say? Would she use the platform to air our dirty laundry? To publicly disavow me? The thought sent a cold shiver down my spine. I tried to prepare myself for the worst. I told myself that whatever she said, whatever she did, I would take it. I would endure it because she was my daughter, and I loved her, even if she didn't love me back. I rehearsed my proud dad smile in the mirror, trying to make it look genuine, trying to hide the turmoil raging inside me. I picked out my best suit, the one I usually reserved for important client meetings, hoping that looking the part would somehow make me feel the part. But every button, every crease, felt like a costume, a facade in the days leading up to the graduation. The tension in the house was almost unbearable. Sarah was withdrawn, barely speaking. I tried to engage her, to talk about her plans for after graduation, about her speech. But she'd just shrug, offer a non-committal answer, and disappear into her room. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, afraid to say or do anything that might trigger another outburst, another reminder of the chasm between us. The silence was deafening, filled with all the things we weren't saying, all the emotions we were bottling up. I remembered the excitement of her elementary school graduations, the joy in her eyes, the way she'd run to me for a hug. Now, there was just a quiet resignation, a sense of dread. I wanted to rewind time, to go back to those simpler days, to fix whatever I had broken. But time, like Sarah, was moving forward, relentlessly, towards a future I couldn't control, a future where I might no longer have a place in her life. The thought was a constant ache in my chest, a dull, persistent pain that overshadowed everything else. I was losing her, and I didn't know how to stop it. The graduation, instead of being a joyous occasion, felt like a final, agonizing countdown to an inevitable goodbye. The auditorium buzzed with a nervous energy, a mix of excitement and anticipation. Parents fidgeted in their seats, cameras at the ready. Graduates, a sea of blue caps and gowns, whispered and laughed, their faces a kaleidoscope of emotions, relief, joy, a touch of fear for the unknown. I sat there, a silent observer in the midst of it all, my heart a drum against my ribs. Every proud parent around me seemed to radiate happiness, a stark contrast to the hollow ache in my own chest. I tried to focus on the program, on the names of the students, on anything but the gnawing anxiety that tightened its grip with each passing minute. Then, the moment arrived. The principal's voice boomed over the loudspeakers, announcing the valedictorian. And now, it is my distinct honor to introduce our valedictorian, Ms. Sarah Miller. A ripple of applause. Then a hush fell over the crowd. Sarah walked onto the stage, a beacon of poise and grace. She looked magnificent. Her cap sat perfectly on her head, her gown flowed around her, and a quiet confidence emanated from her. She was no longer the little girl who clung to my hand, nor the defiant teenager who screamed at me. She was a young woman, on the cusp of something great, and a wave of overwhelming pride, tinged with profound sadness, washed over me. She approached the podium, adjusted the microphone with a practiced hand, and took a deep breath. Her eyes, those intelligent, expressive eyes, swept across the audience. I held my breath, my gaze locked on her, searching for any sign, any flicker of emotion that might betray her intentions. Would she look at me? Would she acknowledge me? Or would she simply glide past, a ghost in her own narrative. Her gaze lingered for a fraction of a second on our section, and I thought I saw a brief, almost imperceptible softening in her eyes. Or maybe it was just wishful thinking. A desperate hope in the face of impending public humiliation. "Good morning, faculty, parents, friends, and fellow graduates." Her voice, clear and resonant, filled the auditorium. It was the voice of a leader, a scholar, a young woman ready to conquer the world. My chest tightened. This was it, the moment of truth. I braced myself, my jaw clenched, ready for the blow. I imagined her thanking her mother, her teachers, her friends, perhaps even a vague reference to family that would pointedly exclude me. I envisioned the pitying glances from other parents, the knowing looks from those who had witnessed our strained relationship over the years. "My name is Sarah Miller," she continued, her voice steady. "And today, I want to talk about family. Not just a family you're born into, but the family you choose, the family that chooses you." A ripple went through the audience, a collective murmur of curiosity. My heart pounded. What was she doing? This wasn't the standard valedictorian speech. This was personal. My mind raced, trying to decipher her meaning, trying to prepare for the inevitable twist that would surely lead to my public dismantling. She spoke of challenges, of growth, of the winding paths we take to find our true selves. She wove in anecdotes about her time in high school, about the late nights studying, the triumphs and the setbacks. It was eloquent, inspiring, everything a valedictorian speech should be. But beneath the surface, I felt a tremor of something else, a subtle undercurrent that hinted at a deeper, more personal narrative. She spoke of resilience, of overcoming obstacles, of the importance of having a strong foundation. And with each word, my anxiety grew, a knot tightening in my stomach, anticipating the moment she would pivot, the moment she would reveal the truth of our fractured relationship. "I wouldn't be standing here today," she said, her voice gaining a new intensity, "without the unwavering support of the people who believed in me. Even when I didn't believe in myself. The people who pushed me, who challenged me, who loved me unconditionally." She paused, her eyes sweeping the audience once more. And this time, her gaze settled on me. It wasn't a fleeting glance, but a direct, unwavering look. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. A smile that held a lifetime of shared moments, of unspoken understanding, of a bond that had been tested, but not broken. My breath hitched in my throat. My eyes welled up, a hot, stinging sensation. I could feel the tears, unbidden, tracing paths down my cheeks. And then she said it, the words that shattered the wall between us, the words that healed a wound I thought would never close. And most importantly, "I want to thank my dad, John." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The knot in my stomach unraveled, replaced by a surge of pure, unadulterated emotion. "My name." She said my name, not just my father, or my parent, or some vague, impersonal pronoun, but my dad, John. It was a public declaration, a choice, a recognition. In that moment, in front of hundreds of people, she chose me. She chose to acknowledge our bond, to affirm my place in her life, to declare, unequivocally, that I was her father. The tears flowed freely now, blurring my vision, but I didn't care. I was vaguely aware of the murmurs in the audience, the surprised glances, the quiet sniffles from other parents who were undoubtedly moved by her words. But all I could see was Sarah, my Sarah, standing on that stage, her eyes shining, her voice strong, and her heart, I realized, finally open to me. She continued her speech, but the words were a blur. All I could hear was the echo of my name, reverberating in the silent chambers of my heart. She spoke of the future, of dreams, of the courage it takes to pursue your passions. And as she spoke, I saw not just a valedictorian, but the little girl who used to fall asleep in my arms, the teenager who challenged my every rule, the young woman who had, against all odds, found her way back to me. The years of doubt, of insecurity, of feeling like I wasn't enough, melted away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of gratitude and love. The wall, the invisible barrier that had separated us for so long, had crumbled, not with a scream, but with a whisper of my name, spoken by my daughter, who, in that moment, chose me as her real dad. It was the greatest gift she could have ever given me, a validation that transcended biology, a love that was earned, fought for, and finally, unequivocally, returned. And as she finished her speech, to a standing ovation, I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that our story, our complicated, beautiful story, was far from over. It was just beginning. After the graduation, after the tears and the overwhelming relief, a new chapter began for Sarah and me. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of congratulations, hugs, and a few curious glances from those who had witnessed the emotional climax of her speech. I didn't care. All I saw was Sarah, her face beaming, her eyes shining with a newfound lightness. She hugged me tight, a genuine, heartfelt embrace that spoke volumes without a single word. It was the hug I had longed for years. The one that finally closed the distance between us. We went out for dinner, just the two of us, to her favorite Italian place. The conversation flowed easily, naturally, for the first time in what felt like an eternity. We talked about her speech, about her plans for art school, about her dreams. I listened, truly listened, without judgment, without trying to steer her towards a more practical path. And she, in turn, listened to me, to my hopes, to my fears, to the quiet anxieties that had plagued me for so long. It was a conversation built on mutual respect, on a shared understanding that we were both flawed, both trying our best, both deserving of love and acceptance. Over the next few months, as Sarah prepared for college, our bond deepened in ways I never thought possible. We spent hours talking, laughing, reminiscing about old times. She shared her art with me, her sketches, her paintings, her digital designs, and I, for the first time, truly saw the beauty and the talent in her work. I saw the passion, the dedication, the raw emotion that she poured into every piece, and I realized how foolish I had been to try and stifle that creativity, to try and force her into a mold that wasn't her own. I apologized, genuinely, for my past mistakes, for my inability to see her for who she truly was. And she, with a grace that still amazes me, forgave me. We talked about Emily, about her biological father, about the complexities of her identity. She asked questions, and I answered them as honestly as I could, without sugarcoating the truth, but also without dwelling on the pain. We explored her family history, piecing together fragments of information, creating a narrative that was uniquely hers. It was a journey of discovery for both of us, a way to understand the past and to build a stronger future. Sending her off to college was bittersweet. I was incredibly proud, but also a little sad to see her go. Our house, once filled with tension, now felt a little too quiet, a little too empty. But this time, the emptiness wasn't a void of unspoken words, but a space filled with memories, with love, with the promise of future visits and phone calls. We talked almost every day, sometimes for hours, sometimes just a quick check-in. She'd tell me about her classes, her new friends, her artistic projects, and I'd tell her about my day, about work, about the mundane details of life back home. It was a new rhythm, a new chapter in our story, one that was built on a foundation of trust, respect, and unconditional love. Years passed. Sarah thrived in art school, graduating with honors and quickly making a name for herself in the design world. She opened her own studio, collaborated with renowned artists, and created work that was both beautiful and thought-provoking. I watched from afar, my heart bursting with pride, knowing that I had played a small part in her journey, that I had, in my own imperfect way, helped her to become the incredible woman she was. Our relationship continued to evolve. We were no longer just father and daughter. We were friends, confidants, partners in crime. We traveled together, explored new cities, shared new experiences. We celebrated holidays, birthdays, and countless small victories. There were still moments of disagreement, of course, moments when our different personalities clashed. But now, we approached those moments with understanding, with empathy, with a shared commitment to working through them. The wall was gone, replaced by a bridge built on love and forgiveness. Looking back, I realized that Sarah's scream at the graduation, "You're not my real dad," was not an ending, but a beginning. It was the catalyst that forced us to confront the unspoken truths, to tear down the walls we had built between us. And her speech, her public declaration of love and acceptance, was the moment of healing, the moment when she chose me, not just as her father, but as her dad. It was a powerful reminder that family isn't just about blood. It's about connection, about commitment, about the unwavering love that binds us together, no matter what. And for that, I will be forever grateful. My daughter, my Sarah, taught me the true meaning of fatherhood, and in doing so, she gave me the greatest gift of all, herself, fully and completely. As the graduation day approached, my internal monologue became a constant, nagging companion. I found myself replaying every interaction with Sarah, every argument, every moment of silence, searching for clues, for a way to understand what had gone wrong. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, picturing the moment she would walk across that stage, imagining the words she might say. Would she be cold? Indifferent? Would she use the platform to finally, publicly, sever the ties that bound us? The anxiety was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I tried to rationalize it, to tell myself that this was just a phase, a normal part of a teenager's journey to independence. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. It was the culmination of years of unspoken resentments, of my own insecurities, of the complex dynamics of a family built on love, but also on loss and unspoken truths. I wished I could go back in time, to the moment she screamed those words, and react differently. To calmly explain, to listen, to bridge the gap, instead of letting it widen into a chasm. But time, as always, marched relentlessly forward, bringing us closer to the inevitable. I remember the morning of the graduation, the air thick with a false sense of normalcy. We had breakfast in silence, the clinking of forks against plates, the only sound. Sarah was dressed in a cap and gown, looking impossibly grown up, a stranger in my own home. I wanted to tell her how proud I was, how much I loved her, but the words felt hollow, inadequate. They seemed to catch in my throat, choked by the weight of all the things left unsaid. We drove to the auditorium in silence, the car filled with the unspoken tension of years of unresolved conflict. When Sarah began her speech, her voice clear and strong, a wave of dread washed over me. I braced myself for the inevitable, for the public acknowledgement of our fractured relationship. But then, she started talking about family, about choice, about connection, and a flicker of hope, fragile and tentative, ignited within me. Could she be talking about us? I watched her, my heart pounding, searching for any sign, any indication that my desperate hope wasn't just a delusion. When her eyes met mine, and that small, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips, I knew it was a moment of profound recognition, a silent conversation that transcended words. And then, when she said my name, my dad, John, it was like a dam breaking. All the pent-up emotions, the years of worry, of doubt, of silent suffering, came rushing out in a torrent of tears. I wasn't just crying for myself. I was crying for the little girl who had lost her mother too soon, for the teenager who had struggled to find her place, for the young woman who had, against all odds, chosen me. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated catharsis, a release of all the pain and fear that had weighed me down for so long. The audience's reaction was a blur. I was vaguely aware of the murmurs, the surprised gasps, the quiet sniffles from other parents who were undoubtedly moved by her words. But all I could see was Sarah, my Sarah, standing on that stage, her eyes shining, her voice strong, and her heart, I realized, finally open to me. It was a moment that transcended the boundaries of the auditorium, a moment that resonated deep within my soul. It was the culmination of a lifetime of trying, of loving, of sacrificing, and in that moment, I knew it had all been worth it. Every single tear, every single argument, every single moment of doubt, because in the end, she chose me. And that choice, that simple, powerful declaration, was all I ever needed. The weeks and months following Sarah's graduation were a period of profound healing and rediscovery for both of us. The initial euphoria of her speech slowly settled into a quiet, comfortable understanding. It wasn't a magical fix. Years of unspoken tensions and insecurities don't vanish overnight. But the foundation had been laid, a new path forged. We started talking, truly talking, about everything, about Emily, about her biological father, about the void that had always existed in Sarah's life, and about my own struggles to fill it. I learned more about Sarah's perspective during those conversations than I had in all her teenage years combined. She spoke of her resentment, not just at my attempts to control her future, but at what she perceived as my inability to acknowledge her mother's artistic legacy. She felt I was trying to erase Emily, to replace her, rather than integrate her into our lives. It was a painful truth to hear, but a necessary one. I realized that my pragmatic approach, my desire to provide stability, had inadvertently stifled her creativity and her connection to her past. I had been so focused on being a provider, a protector, that I had forgotten to be a nurturer of her spirit. We spent hours poring over old photo albums, Emily's sketchbooks, and the few letters she had kept. Sarah saw a side of her mother she hadn't known, a vibrant, passionate artist who poured her soul into her work. And I, in turn, saw Emily through Sarah's eyes, a new appreciation for the woman I had loved so deeply. It was a bittersweet process, filled with laughter and tears, but it was essential. It allowed Sarah to connect with her roots, and it allowed me to finally grieve Emily's loss in a way I hadn't been able to before. Burdened as I was by the immediate need to be strong for Sarah, we also talked about her biological father. Sarah had always carried a quiet curiosity, a longing for answers about the man who had left before she was born. I had always been hesitant to discuss him, fearing it would undermine my own role as her father. But now, with the walls down, I realized that acknowledging his existence didn't diminish my love or my commitment. It simply made her story more complete. We researched what little information we had, piecing together a fragmented picture of a young man who was simply not ready for the responsibilities of fatherhood. It wasn't a satisfying answer, perhaps, but it was an answer nonetheless, and it allowed Sarah to let go of some of the lingering questions, to understand that his absence was about him, not about her worth. As Sarah prepared for art school, I became her biggest cheerleader. I helped her with her portfolio, drove her to art supply stores, and even sat through a few of her art history lectures, trying to understand the world she was so passionate about. I saw the joy in her eyes when she talked about her projects, the way her face lit up when she discovered a new technique, and I realized that true fatherhood wasn't about molding her into my image, but about helping her become the best version of herself, whatever that might be. It was about supporting her dreams, even if they were different from my own. Sending her off to college was a different kind of goodbye this time. There was still a pang of sadness, a quiet ache in my chest, as I watched her drive away, but it was overshadowed by a profound sense of peace and pride. Our house, once filled with the echoes of unspoken words, now felt lighter, filled with the warmth of shared memories and the promise of a future built on genuine connection. We continued our daily calls, our weekly video chats, our occasional visits, and with each conversation, our bond grew stronger, deeper, more resilient. Sarah's journey through art school was a testament to her talent and her determination. She excelled, not just academically, but creatively. She found her voice, her unique artistic style, and she wasn't afraid to use it. I attended her art shows, her critiques, her graduation, and with each milestone, I felt a renewed sense of gratitude for the woman she had become, and for the lessons she had taught me about love, about acceptance, about the true meaning of family. She taught me that being a father wasn't about biology, or about control, or about having all the answers. It was about showing up every single day with an open heart and loving unconditionally. And in doing so, she gave me the greatest gift of all, the opportunity to be her dad, truly and completely. The transformation in my own life, spurred by Sarah's speech and our subsequent reconciliation, was profound. I began to reevaluate everything. My career, which had once been the sole focus of my pragmatic ambition, now felt less central. I still enjoyed the intellectual challenge of software engineering, but the relentless pursuit of success, the long hours, the constant pressure, it all seemed less important. I started to prioritize my time differently, making sure I had more space for the things that truly mattered. My relationship with Sarah, my friendships, and even my own personal growth. I found myself engaging in activities I had long neglected. I started reading more, not just technical manuals, but fiction, history, philosophy. I took up hiking, finding solace and clarity in nature. I even dabbled in painting, a clumsy attempt to understand Sarah's world. And while I was no artist, the act of creating, of expressing something beyond logic and code, was surprisingly therapeutic. It was as if a part of me that had been dormant for years, stifled by grief and the relentless demands of single parenthood, was finally awakening. My relationships with others also shifted. I became more open, more vulnerable. I talked to my friends about my struggles, about my fears, about the profound lessons Sarah had taught me. And in doing so, I found a deeper connection with them, a shared humanity that transcended the superficial conversations we had often settled for. I even reconnected with some distant relatives, people I had drifted away from in the years after Emily's death, finding comfort and support in the extended family network. The most significant change, however, was in my understanding of love and fatherhood. I had always believed that love was about providing, about protecting, about ensuring a secure future. And while those things are important, I realized they are not the whole picture. True love, I learned, is about acceptance, about seeing someone for who they truly are, flaws and all, and loving them unconditionally. It's about letting go of your own expectations, your own fears, and trusting that the people you love will find their own way, with or without your guidance. Fatherhood, I discovered, was not about being perfect or about having all the answers. It was about being present, about listening, about learning to adapt, and about admitting when you're wrong. It was about the messy, unpredictable, often frustrating, but ultimately deeply rewarding journey of raising another human being. It was about the quiet moments of connection, the shared laughter, the unspoken understanding. It was about the tears, both hers and mine, and the strength we found in each other during moments of vulnerability. Sarah's speech, that powerful, public declaration, had not only healed our relationship, but had also set me free. Free from the burden of trying to be someone I wasn't. Free from the constant need for external validation. Free from the fear of not being enough. It was a liberation, a profound shift in perspective that allowed me to embrace life with a newfound sense of purpose and joy. I was no longer just Sarah's dad. I was John, a man who had learned to love, to grow, and to truly live, thanks to the incredible young woman who had, in her own unique way, taught me everything I needed to know about being a father. And as I watched her embark on her own journey, I knew that our story, our beautiful, complicated, and ever-evolving story, would continue to unfold, filled with new adventures, new challenges, and an abundance of unconditional love.